Today's episode is brought to you by the book Everyone is a Sinner But Me, available now at Amazon.com and BarnesandNoble.com. Pre-recorded from Volpes Studios, it's the MCS1 show featuring Lord Carrasco. And now your host, MCS1.
Welcome to another exciting edition of the MCS1 show. I'm MCS1 and I'm here for the first time ever. I have my dear friend, Lord Carrasco.
Yay!
Lord Carrasco, welcome.
Oh, it's nice to be here.
Nice to have you. I'm so glad I was able to finally have you on the show.
I love the Lord Carrasco.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So the reason I have Lord Carrasco here is I got a special treat for everyone at home. We're continuing our little series
Happy Valley Hate.
and discussing the different norms from Happy Valley, Utah, basically Utah County, and the norms that differ from the rest of the world. And one thing I wanted to do today was discuss how different the people are, not even with just the rest of the world, but the contrast between people from just Salt Lake City, about 30 to 45 minutes north of Provo, Happy Valley area, and Provo, Utah, which is, 30, 45 minutes south of Salt Lake City. And so that is why I have Lord Carrasco here. So once again, welcome, Lord Carrasco.
Oh, thank you.
So Lord Carrasco, tell me about like what you do for a living, just generally. Like what is your profession?
So I'm a real estate manager. So I manage real estate. That could be anything from, well, mostly all of my holdings that I manage are apartment buildings. But it could be anything that's considered residential, commercial, or industrial. And that usually covers what property management does. So that's what I do is actually manage and take care of. That means people buy the properties and then they got to have somebody take care of them for them. And that's what I do.
And you're the man who runs it all, makes it happen, make sure the place does not burn down, type of thing.
Well, I can't guarantee it won't burn down, but
Been through a few fires, haven't you?
I actually have.
Oh,
I have. I've been through 3 or 4. And as a property manager, that's one of the most scary things you encounter.
Yeah.
Is a fire. Because you never know, you're dealing with possible loss of life, definitely loss of property.
Yeah.
And so it's scary, or can be.
Very scary stuff. I can imagine. So let's talk about how long have you been doing property management? You've been doing it quite a while, haven't you? Like,
yeah, actually, it's just followed me my entire life. I mean, I can't get away from it, no
you
matter
just
what I
can't-
do.
You just can't escape.
No, it's like a bad cold. It just sticks with you forever. When I was a kid, my mom and dad used to manage a property here in Provo. Back then, it's just a 12-unit property, and it's still around. I drive by it every once in a while. When I was a kid, I used to mow the lawns.
Do you ever drive by it and think one day I'm gonna own that and re-rent it? Or
I never thought that, but it's really interesting
but
because
now that it's in your head.
one of the properties we have right now is like less than a block away from it. And so one of the properties I manage and look over it, and so I see it on a constant basis, and so it constantly reminds me of the days when I was in my youth and my so-called management. Like I said, I'd mow the lawns, I'd vacuum the hallways, I'd collect the quarters from the laundry machines that were there, and
So
that was my
you've been
first experience.
You've been groomed for this growing up. It was
Oh my
it
goodness.
was destiny as
Yeah.
much as you don't like me saying that.
It definitely has been, and then been away from a while, but then got started back into it when I lived in Los Angeles. Did it down there in the apartment complex I lived. They were looking for somebody, and then moved to Utah for a job that I was offered up here.
Back to Utah.
Back to Utah.
Back to Utah.
Coming back to my roots. And anyways, I got offered a job up here in Salt Lake City and took it. And so I've been doing property management for years.
Yeah.
I mean, if you
long
oh
time,
man,
basically.
I don't think they keep count anymore.
The numbers just keep climbing, and you're like, I'm done counting.
Yeah, I keep thinking one day I'm gonna finally be able to be what I want to be when I grow up.
I think in a way we all have that mentality.
Yeah. So I've been doing it a long time.
Okay, cool. So you were in, how long were you based in Salt Lake City?
I was based in Salt Lake City for 14 and a half years, almost 15
Almost
years
15 years. So
at the same property.
quite a long time. How was it? And was the property pretty good size, small? Can you give us like a quick rundown of the size of it, I
Yeah,
guess?
it was a conglomerate of several properties. I worked for some private investors that they would buy deals in the Salt Lake City area or the Ogden area, and what they would do is we managed it out of my office in Salt Lake City. Our total portfolio, I want to say, was probably about 750 units.
Okay.
But I also oversaw some warehouse space, so that was industrial, and then
Yeah.
commercial. We had some commercial. One of my properties had a store and a interior designer
Oh,
in one of them.
nice.
Yeah, so it kept me busy, and the size was really big. Most of it was apartments, but if they would buy or invest in something, and then they would pull it underneath my wing, and I was then promoted from just um, running the one property to overseeing everything that they had. Um,
Everything the light touches, Simba, is your
yes,
domain and kingdom within the Salt
exactly.
Lake Valley.
Yeah, the owners held me up over the edge of the building, my little legs dangling off the edge of it, and one day this will all be yours. So, but it was a lot and quite a bit, mostly. So I dealt with a lot of property management up there, all different aspects. In fact, all three of them.
What were the people like up in the Salt Lake area? Were they similar to the people you dealt with in Los Angeles? Would you consider them normal, a little off? What just generally?
Well, the people in Los Angeles, I didn't deal with them very long because I only did property management down there for about 6 months to maybe a year. And generally, I didn't hardly had any problems down there. I mean, you always deal with morons, no matter
Yeah.
what. You always do. I had a situation in California. My wife was pregnant at the time, and at 2 o'clock in the morning, there was a knock on my door, woke me up, and so I got up, went to the door, and there was a guy standing there, and he's like, "Hey, I just thought I'd tell you that somebody's interior car light on their car is on down in the parking garage." And I remember just looking at him, and then I just slammed the door. 'Cause I was like, "Are you serious? It's 2 o'clock in the morning and you're telling me I don't know whose car it is, and that." I'm like, "You gotta be kidding me.
The bad good Samaritan.
Moron." That's all I could keep thinking was, "My heck." And my wife was pregnant, it woke her up and she was upset. And when pregnant women, they take it out on you, the husband. So anyways. So it's different. Salt Lake City, not I didn't have a lot of problems as far as upset tenants most of the time they seem to be really rational. I mean, you can't avoid it altogether,
Yeah.
but
There's always going to be a bad apple in the bunch.
there is. And I would have somebody that would either complain or really get upset or angry maybe once every 3 months,
Okay.
maybe. I mean, or they would at least, they'd say, "Hey,
Not too bad
no,
though.
it was really great."
Especially when you're speaking of all the properties that you were managing, once every 3 months, with for my day job with the clients that I deal with or have dealt with in the past, hey, I'd take that any day.
Yeah, and one of the things that's really interesting, the properties that I managed for the most part were really old. I mean, we're talking like over 100 years old,
Wow.
and so the plumbing was poor, the electrical systems were poor. I mean, everything
Pretty old school.
very. So stuff breaks down a lot. It's not like you're dealing, and even with that, I didn't have a lot of issue as far as I mean, we had a lot of maintenance issues, but we jumped on them, got them fixed. But it seems like people seem to be a little bit more decent.
Okay. They were fairly friendly. Once every 3 months, you might have a blow up. So coming down from Salt Lake Valley to Happy Valley, Utah, how much has changed? How often do you have blowups now, or generally with Happy Valley? You went from once, maybe every 3 months to about, what would you say the ratio is?
On average, I have at least one a month,
One a month.
and that's the least amount is one a month, and
Okay.
I'm sometimes two and three.
Wow. So it's gone from like almost, I'm not sure how much that is. Like nearly, I guess maybe 6 times as much tops or
Yeah.
around ballpark.
Oh yeah. I've been down at this new place now for a little over 2 years, and the instances that I've had with people and their anger is just amazing. I mean, I understand the whole property management thing and renting. I ought to. I've been in it for probably, 15, 16 actively, more than that years.
Yeah, and you
So I
even grew
get
up
it.
with it. I mean, you get the social mentality of people.
I understand when things break, yeah, and when things happen, the approach is everything to it. I mean, the thing is though, I've never had as many instances where people come unhinged or angry and just are rude and mean as I have since I've worked at this place, down here in Utah Valley. It's
Wow,
amazing. It's
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 not
like
just
night
one
and
place;
day.
it's several properties as well.
It is several properties.
And so it's just kind of spread all throughout like the Provo, Orem, Happy Valley area.
Yeah.
And it's so you have that. How would you describe the people here in Happy Valley compared to how they are in Salt Lake?
The big one's entitlement. For some reason, it seems that they're entitled. Um,
Now, is it the kids, the adults, all of them,
I think it's
everyone?
all of them. Really, honestly,
Because that's the stance that I've been taking. Is it's
there's
everyone, including the
yeah,
kids?
there's a different mentality. I mean, it's worse with the kids, but I even get that with the adults. That somehow, and I guess there's this feeling that because we're all such a loving and forgiving community, that individuals can just bend the rules or break the rules because it benefits them, and I have to just stand by and watch it happen. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
because I'm such a forgiving person, oh, I'll forgive you. I mean, one of my biggest pet peeves is like when I go to Walmart, like people will pull up to the building and park at the building,
Oh yeah.
and then they go, they'll park their car and get out, or someone will stay in the car while they just run in to get that one thing when they could. I mean, the actual parking is like 20 or 30 feet away, but
Yeah.
no, they're going to inconvenience and nobody will say anything because, oh, we're so forgiving and we love our brother. They're not going to say anything. And
Or
I'm
they,
just
they
like,
they pull up into the little spot next to the handicap spot, like right in front of there, and try to always treat it like it's a parking
well, and the
space.
funny thing about
And
it
that
is
happens everywhere here, not just
those
Walmart.
are unload and loading signs for handicapped people so that they can
Yeah.
open and unload. It's actually against the law. I mean, you can get a
Oh,
ticket for
really?
parking in those zones. Yeah. Oh, it's as bad as parking in the actual spot because
Oh,
if you park
man.
there, they can't even get out to get their wheelchairs out, or that's the whole purpose of it.
Yeah,
So
I was just thinking about that as well, and I think about that when I see that. It's just kind of sad that it happens, and people
eh,
act like it's okay.
yeah, and it just bugs me that sometimes they feel like the rules don't apply to them. And I see that
Yeah.
more often here than and especially in Utah Valley than anywhere else.
Yeah. And I see it a lot here too, more than like because I used to live in Los Angeles as well. I've seen it more here than when I lived in Los Angeles. And I know I have never lived in Salt Lake City, but I notice it more down here than I do in Salt Lake. In Salt Lake, I'm not there very much, but I don't see anything crazy
Yeah.
like what I do down here.
Well, one of the big things that I experience a lot, especially down here, that I never used to experience in LA or in Salt Lake City, was a lot of this when a mistake happens or there's a problem, say with a maintenance issue. Sometimes there's two things that bug me with that. One is they treat me like as if I specifically went into their apartment and broke their plumbing. Like I took a hammer and went in and busted it, and so
You're
they
like, I've been waiting for this moment.
yes, like personally,
This guy pays their rent on time. They haven't
or their
caused
light
any
didn't come on.
issues.
I went and unhooked it in the middle of the night, just to cause their issues. It's really amazing how they come in and
Teach you to come tell me that
yeah,
light's on in the
and
parking
just
garage.
because I'm the face of the company, somehow that's the way they treat me instead of, hey, I get it or I understand that, things happen. I mean, things break down all the time and we have nothing to do with it. And just because we own it, somehow the fact that it doesn't work now is my fault and I did it on purpose.
Yeah.
The other thing that just really gets me, I've never seen this. I never had this happen to me in Salt Lake, and I never had this happen to me in LA. But one of the things that I've had common down here immensely is the big line. So what are you going to do for me? So like if something
Yeah.
breaks or something like that, so what are you going to do for me? It's it's amazing how much it's like, Nothing. I mean, what do you want me to do? I mean, it broke. I'm gonna fix it. That's what I'm gonna take care of it. But everybody like wants compensation.
They will always want extra
It's
compensation for
amazing to me.
things.
I'm like, are you serious?
Like it's created so much pain for them or
We're
whatever.
inconvenienced every day because of all of life's happenings. It's called life. That's the whole definition of it is inconvenience. I mean, and so you don't get compensated for inconvenience. And it's just amazing how they'll just because they were a little inconvenienced, like and where I say, like I personally went and did it, that they should be compensated for
Yeah.
it.
And a lot of it comes down to these days, I'm guessing here it just is like this mentality on steroids is customer service. They always try to like go above and beyond. And they take this to like above, beyond, then some, and then compensation because other companies are willing to bend over and do stuff like that. And in housing, you can't really do stuff like that, is the thing, because of the Fair Housing Act. Michael, could you kind of just run through real quick? I'm pretty sure you can explain this like really quick. The like what Fair Housing Act is.
So the Fair Housing Act is federal oversight that was passed by the United States Congress. It's an act of Congress. That's what we call it, the Fair Housing Act. And what it basically was, it was rules that were enacted to make sure that people were treated fairly in housing, that there was no discrimination that went on. There are actually 7 federal um, discrimination forms of discrimination. There's race, national origin, creed.
Not smokers.
Yeah, actually, smoking is
Not smokers.
smoking is not a protected class, and there's 7 of them. Utah actually has 2 more. Each state will have their own as well. I think
Oh.
California has something like 60 of them
Wow.
of their own within the state. Utah has 2.
Maybe California allows smokers to be protected. Who knows?
It wouldn't surprise me. But basically, it's just an act. It just says, like, what you do with a tenant as far as executing the lease, the rules of the lease, you have to apply evenly. In other words, you can't pick and choose who you want to apply the lease to. So, like, if somebody, I mean, if you have a rule in your contract that says that your rent is late on this certain day, then you need to charge everybody that fee, not pick and choose. And oh, you paid late, you feel sorry for them. You can't do that. You have to be the same with everybody. Otherwise, it could be conceived as discrimination in one of the protected classes. And so
So-
that's what the act does, is it protects it. It's against discrimination so that everybody's treated fairly.
Yeah, so it's basically making sure everyone's treated the same, in a really crappy form of communism for housing.
Actually,
in a way.
Yeah,
I guess.
definitely. And it's got some good things and some bad things. I mean, for me as a landlord, it's
Consistency.
consistency, very much so. The bad thing is that when people pay late and they get the late fee, now I'm the bad guy, which
Yeah.
really I have to follow the law. I can't pick and choose. And so,
Heaven forbid you do your job.
yeah, no kidding. Especially on an agreement that you agreed beforehand, that you said the 2 of you signed and said, okay, if I pay on this date, it's late and I will pay a fee.
Yeah.
Yeah, you agreed to that before you even moved into the contract, and yet I still get blowback on that.
Yeah. And it's just ridiculous, that type of thing. And so you get a lot of people just being like, hey, what are you gonna do for me? Type of thing. And you're like, well, I can't really do much for you, just this. My hands are somewhat tied. And the other thing is, people don't realize this with the Fair Housing Act, you can be personally sued.
Yeah, with most businesses, you cannot be held liable as an employee of the company. So, like, if I worked at Walmart and something happened at Walmart, they can go after Walmart, but they can't go after me personally. If I was doing my job and just, you know, taking care of my assignments and responsibilities, and somehow it offended somebody, they can't go after you personally. They
Yeah.
can go after Walmart, the business, because you're an agent of the company, but they can't go after you personally. I mean, they probably could in court, but the laws here in Utah really protect you on that. With this, the Fair Housing Act, no, you can be personally held liable. And if they come after you, the minimum fine is $300,000.
That's the minimum.
And that's the minimum. And I mean, it's federal government. For instance, one of the properties we had up in Salt Lake City, one of the managers that I was over had an instance with a tenant who went and filed with the Fair Housing, and they opened up an investigation. And She was employed with us. She got free rent, but her husband was not. He just was married to her, lived in the apartment, that they were in. She worked for us. He was not on the books. When the fines were assessed, they assessed a $300,000 fine for her and for her husband.
Wow.
That's $600,000 was the letter. And basically they don't just fine you. They just tell you. They say, "Hey, you are, under investigation. Here's the possible fines," because they
Here's the
don't
cost.
what it
Wow.
could be. And basically, believe it or not, and it's really interesting because fair housing will say it's different. They always do because
Hmm.
they're the federal government. But they'll say, that, "Oh, we're not really assessing the fines. We're just letting you know." But basically, it's different than criminal law. You're guilty until proven innocent, and they'll do an investigation, and they go, and you have to prove you're innocent. Is basically the way that it is. Now, fair housing will say that's not the case, but they're not being straight. I've dealt with it on this particular issue that we had. Because I was her supervisor, I was with this case the whole way, and I saw all their responses. I saw how they acted, and eventually the charges they found were unfounded. She was basically claiming, and it had to deal with she was on housing, and it had to deal with that aspect of it. But the woman had filed and said that she was discriminated against because she was from um, England.
Huh.
And then the other thing is she said that she was discriminated against because she had children. Now there was no proof. She couldn't prove it. Basically, she just didn't pay her rent. And she felt like our manager was harassing her because she
So she
wouldn't.
just took the quickest thing she could find.
Yeah, obviously that she did that. But the thing is in the negotiations with the fair housing and all of that, what ended up at the very end, she was exonerated, but they basically said, "Well, we want you to waive all this woman's rent and fees and everything." Even though she was exonerated, they still it still favored the tenant who clearly owed rent. That's all she owed was rent. But it
Huh.
was just really funny how that all went through it, and so I was there fair housing, so just so you know, I know what went on. So you can say whatever you want, but it was a shaft.
Crazy. So the people at the end, your employee, they didn't have.
No, they did not have to pay, and they were exonerated.
Yeah.
The investigation they did, which they're required to investigate by law. I get that. That's all part of the system. And they were exonerated. But the way that the exoneration kind of went at the end was, well, we'll drop the charges, or we'll drop the assessment and the fines if you drop all the rent and everything that she owes on this other side and let her move out.
Hmm.
And to me, that was disingenuous. It wasn't right. She owed the money, and she basically couldn't come up with the funds. I understand it was partly due to housing, um, but she just didn't. That's not right. That's not
Yeah.
honest. I don't care how you put that. That's just not right.
So moving back to Happy Valley and the type of tenants you deal with, and you mentioned like the entitlement that happens here. You said adults and the kids. Is there any other like traits that you can think of besides that whole entitlement of what are you gonna do for me, or anything else that sets this place apart from Salt Lake?
Not really. I mean, those tend to be the I think the two specific ones that kind of differentiate it from everywhere else.
Yeah,
But it really that one is this mentality that somehow, because we're a more forgiving people here in the valley,
it allows
and
people to walk all over
yes,
everyone else.
basically that the rules don't apply to me because, you're going to forgive me for what I'm doing, type thing. Or, the big one is the rules don't apply to me because
Yeah,
I'm such a good individual, and
and I've seen
the
that
sun
a
shines on
lot.
me,
Sun shines on
more than
me.
anywhere else, and that I see that a lot, and especially in housing, and in housing there's different degrees. Like, I mean, we have student housing, we have regular fair market housing. It's I don't know if it's worse because of this in student housing, but even just in student housing, the mentality is just completely different from
and
that.
and we'll cover that in another show.
Absolutely.
Definitely. Okay, is there anything else that you want to mention about like just the Happy Valley area involving housing? Lord Carrasco.
No, no, but you can keep saying Lord Carrasco
Lord
over and
Carrasco.
over and over again. Do you know how I got that name?
I think I do, but mention it for our listeners.
So, when I was in Salt Lake City, I oversaw about 12 or 13 employees, and I'm a huge Star Wars fan, and
Very big Star Wars fan.
yeah. And I always have loved Darth Vader, and he's called Lord Vader. And so I just love that. And so one day I called a staff meeting, and everybody came in, and they're like, "So what's the staff meeting about?" And I got everybody's attention, and I said, "Okay, so the first thing on the agenda from here on out, you will now address me as Lord Carrasco." Everybody got up and walked out of the room. And they're like, "We don't have time for that." Just left.
Oh
They went out of the
man.
room. But the funny thing is, they started calling me it after that. Everybody started calling me out, on that. And so it's just stuck with me.
This is
And
ridiculous, but we're gonna do it.
so, yeah, so everyone now calls me Lord Carrasco, and I love it.
Nice. Well, Lord Carrasco, thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah.
And until next time, everyone, take care of yourselves and each other. Peace.
Thank you for listening to the MCS1 show. For bi-weekly episodes on society and counterculture, subscribe on iTunes, Google Play or Stitcher. For regular updates, show notes and links, head to the MCS1show.com or search AOL keyword MCS1.